So the losses for Alabama just have not stopped, and we have to get into it because outside of the Steve Sarkisian loss, Alabama has just suffered maybe its most impactful loss yet. So before we get into this, as always, y'all, if you're here, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We're on our push to 1,000 subscribers, and for those of you that have subscribed, thank you so much. Your support means an absolute ton. For those of you that haven't, like I said, we'd love to have you along for the journey. If you're here, go ahead and like the video and drop a comment down below to let me know what you think of the losses at the University of Alabama, because there have been an absolute ton of them. And this next one, and the one that was just announced, may be the most impactful outside of Steve Sarkisian, and I think you could even argue might be even more impactful than Steve Sarkisian. Look, the Alabama offense is going to be incredibly talented next year. You have the heir apparent, who I believe is going to be Bryce Young. He'll be in a quarterback competition with Paul Tyson, Jalen Milroe when he gets on campus. Jalen Milroe is one to watch out for. That guy is uber talented. But whoever wins that position, if you watch my Ohio State video, Alabama fans, I feel like y'all are in a very similar position as Ohio State, where whoever wins that quarterback battle, you can be very, very confident in, because they went through an absolute gauntlet to be given that prize. They have competed with guys who would be starting elsewhere. So that's only going to make them all better, and an entire offseason is going to be great for Bryce Young, because I understand that there were some people on Twitter who had reservations when they saw Bryce Young enter this year. Every throw I saw him make showed me why he was rated the way he was. The ball zips out of his hands different, and there's a velocity to it. It's on a rope, right? And there's something about the way the ball comes out of his hands that just affirmed what I needed to see. But you can have all of that, right? But when you lose a guy like Charles Huff, who was the #1 recruiter in the nation, that is a massive loss. Now look, Bama will still replace coaches. They'll still be able to recruit at the highest order because they have Nick Saban. And as long as Nick Saban is at the head of the cogwheel, things aren't going to drastically change because the process is his, right? Everybody else is just trying to figure it out. That process is his. But a guy like Charles Huff was absolutely sensational on the recruiting trail. Now, Charles Huff has now been promoted as the head coach of Marshall. And first and foremost, congratulations to Charles Huff and his family, because it is a much deserved promotion for the guy. He is and has been great for the University of Alabama on the recruiting trail. And I think Marshall did a phenomenal job hiring Charles Huff. As much as it pains me to say that, because I'm an Alabama fan, y'all know that, it hurts me to see him go away from the university, because he's been phenomenal in his duties there as running back coach. Look at the success Najee Harris had. I mean, look, it goes without saying, Huff has been phenomenal for the University of Alabama, but I could not be more proud for him, and I could not be happier for Marshall. If y'all have been around the channel for a while, one of the first videos I did was about Marshall quarterback Grant Wells, who the first game of last season was absolutely spectacular. Now, he didn't continue that same level of production, but had he continued that same level of production, he'd have been on that Zach Wilson hype train. But his talent is there. Grant Wells is a very intriguing quarterback, and I think when you're Charles Huff, it's a really interesting situation, because you see you have a very talented quarterback in a division that could be yours if you play your cards right at a very historic institution. It's the perfect stepping stone, truly, for Charles Huff, because he's put in a very good position to win. The Marshall roster, while nothing close to the Alabama roster, isn't bad. Like I said, they're returning Grant Wells. You're returning a quarterback who looks to take a major step up in the next season, because there's some expectations on him based on how he played this season. That's awesome for Charles Huff. Now, looking back at this from the Alabama perspective, Alabama has already lost Kyle Flood, they've lost Jeff Banks, they've lost Steve Sarkisian, and now they've lost Charles Huff. Now, all of these losses are super, super impactful. The Banks and Huff loss are really big because they were both top 5 recruiters in the nation. Like I said, Alabama will be fine because even before they had Jeff Banks, they were recruiting at the highest level there could be. But it still hurts, right? When you have that, you have to go out and find guys who are able to replicate that. But at the end of the day, when you have Nick Saban, I suppose that's the ultimate thing that matters, because that is the difference to a lot of these recruits, I would imagine, is Nick Saban. Now, the other loss that is super impactful, it goes without saying, is the Steve Sarkisian loss. Now, Alabama has been interviewing people to come in and do the job, and the heir apparent for the offensive coordinator is apparently Bill O'Brien. Now, look, Bill O'Brien, I have my reservations about him, and it all stems from the DeAndre Hopkins trade, I have to be very honest. It's nothing to do with his actual coaching. Bill O'Brien is a terrible GM. He's a good coach. Look at what he did at Penn State. Look what he did in his capacity as quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. The man can coach football. The man is not a good GM. And those are two entirely different skill sets, and for those that can do both, they are the rarest of the rare. They are the unicorns. So look, the only thing I worry about with Bill O'Brien is the outlook on recruiting, because if I was a recruit, it's going to be harder for me to take him serious than a Steve Sarkisian, because I'm looking at Sark and I'm saying, you didn't trade DeAndre Hopkins for half a ham sandwich. And I love David Johnson. I think David Johnson's a phenomenal player, but that trade sucks, because David Johnson's contract sucks relative to the production that he's been able to give because of injuries. But the best ability is availability. And that's the only thing I see hindering Bill O'Brien is recruiting. But that being said, look at what he did to Penn State. That's all I really need to say, especially at the time they were coming off the Sandusky trials. He really did a great job at Penn State. Now we have more news that Doug Marrone looks to be a candidate to replace Kyle Flood as the offensive line coach. I think this would be a phenomenal hire. Kyle Flood was absolutely incredible this year. He recruited maybe the greatest offensive line class of all time. I think the greatest offensive line class of all time, so that loss is big. But the reason I don't rank the Kyle Flood loss as big as the Jeff Banks, certainly not as big as the Charles Huff or Sark loss, is because Alabama has been known for their offensive line well before Kyle Flood came. That's been the bread and butter of this team since before I've been alive. So if there's one thing when Kyle Flood leaves that I'm like, okay, well, as great as he was, he gave us more credence, the guys will still come here because of the institution. That's offensive line. That's why when people asked me, when Sark and Kyle Flood are now at Texas, if the Brockermeyers could flip, it's a possibility, but I don't think it's very plausible, because at the end of the day, even if Kyle Flood is there, Bama has been doing this absent of Kyle Flood. Kyle Flood did that at Bama. Part of that is because Kyle Flood is an awesome coach. Part of that is because Kyle Flood is an awesome recruiter. Both of those are absolutely true. Part of that is because you were doing it at the University of Alabama, and when you're telling an offensive lineman, as a great offensive line coach and as a great recruiter, come play for me at the University of Alabama because I can teach you, and look at what we've done in the draft with tackles, with guards, with centers. That gives credence. The same cannot be said at Texas right now, although Texas fans, I don't expect for him to just lay goose eggs on the recruiting trail. That's not why I'm saying this. I'm just saying that I have more faith that Alabama will be able to replicate success at the offensive line, recruiting, and development, absent Kyle Flood, instantaneously than I do that they will be able to find a running back coach to the same degree as Charles Huff. Now, I have every bit of reason to believe that, just like with the offensive line, Alabama produces incredible running backs. They will continue to produce incredible running backs, and they will get a running back coach that will be recruiting to the highest order. But Charles Huff was so established, the number one recruiter in the nation, and that's a bigger loss, in my opinion, than the Kyle Flood. But let me know what y'all think in the comments. Which loss do you think is the biggest? If I had to rank them, it would probably be Sark, then Huff, Banks, and then Flood. Like I said, it's no disrespect to Flood. He's an awesome recruiter. He's an awesome coach. It's just that the University of Alabama has done this for a long time. And sure, the University of Alabama has done this with running backs for a long time, but Charles Huff was the number one recruiter in the nation. Right? Not just for running backs. The man's a hell of a recruiter. That's a big loss. But at the end of the day, Alabama has Nick Saban, and that is the end-all, be-all for that program. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think. That's it. See ya.